the 7th of November. Wow. It's day 8 of the Conference of Parties, 26. I must have spent a lot of money to come up with that name. Conference of Parties, 26. They're so bored, they can't even come up with a real name. Hope everybody's doing good on this Sunday. Let's get at it. We got a poll up for everybody. By the way, I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclearproctologist.org. And you can find what's left of my presentations at this site. They took down my other site with 24,000 subscribers with no strikes, no emails. Just bye-bye, Dina. 10 years of presentations gone. So you can come over to the poll, and it's 73% of the 11 votes think climate protesters should give the homeless and destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language down at the nuclear meltdowns the day off. Because nuclear scientists ain't gonna do it. Nuclear alumni, nuclear corporations, nuclear students ain't going there. And if they want to work, they want to change the climate, get your friggin' arse down to Fukushima. Enough with the walk and get on, enough with the talk and get on with the work. Why are you wasting your time marching in the streets when you could be at Fukushima getting cancers and everything? Take one for the planet, come on. In fact, the advertisement for work at Fukushima was, are you homeless? Don't have a job? Got nothing to eat? Come to Fukushima. That was their actual advertisement. We've covered here many times. Had a little D. Dropped by, did he? Okay, so the International Atomic Energy Agency. That's an inside joke if you're not familiar with this story. Let me enlighten you. Fukushima nuclear meltdowns have caused a cascade of effects to our planet, to the phytoplankton, which produces the oxygen, the biggest carbon producer, sequesterer, the bases of the food chain, that phytoplankton. So both the Pacific and the Atlantic hammered with radioactive fallout after just 19 days. It's continuous plume, it didn't stop. So this gets rid of the ability of the planet to cool itself. It gets rid of the glaciers in increments over a few decades. It gets rid of all the species. And it destroys the ozone of the planet also. But it's saturated from the upper troposphere all the way down to the bottom of the oceans. 10 years straight. And there's pulsing energy at the speed of light. The problem is when stuff does that, and they connect with each other at the speed of light almost. Look at gamma, alpha, neutrons, betas. They all pulse almost at the speed of light. Then they change direction when they hit each other almost at the speed of light. It's called a braking effect, a Bremsstrahlung effect. It's a German word that I mostly likely butchered. But what happens is it creates an X-ray effect. The X-ray and then the gamma shines, the neutron burst, the betas, the alphas, pulse and energy every second all around the planet, are sterilizing all the insects. And so they stop reproducing in increments over time. It just seems like they never even existed after a while. And when's the last time you've seen a migratory flock of birds fly over your heads, actually physically seen it yourself? I'm in the capital of the saltwater migratory run in the Atlantic Ocean, out in the Atlantic Ocean on an island. So the International Atomic Energy Agency's job for 75 years has been to deceive you about the side effects of nuclear. Global warming is also one of them. Coal doesn't heat up the planet. Emissions don't heat up the planet. Oil emissions don't heat up the planet. They turn into dirt. But radiation sure heats up the planet. So it's another day of activism for people that are pushing. Now, you like this. Let me switch this off for a second. You'll like this. The protesters are not protesters. They're cheerleaders. They want the Conference of Parties, this corporation known as United Nations, that has a charter like any other corporation, like McDonald's or Walmart or whatever. It's just a corporation. That's all they actually are. They don't have any sovereignty over your countries. They can't change your constitutions or your Bill of Rights or your Magna Cartas. They're a company. They have no authority after property. They can't pick up a phone and have authority anywhere else either, unless it's on property they own under a charter as a business. And they're going to be the arbiters of climate mitigation and everything else. But they just want $183 trillion. The figure's going to cost them. And they'll start off with $100 million a year, and they'll double that every other year. But that's what they're claiming. That's the whole story, basically. Instead of the world fixing it, this corporation, no different than Walmart or McDonald's, but not, it's about the same size, right? And it has all these lobbyists for different industries that work for it. Well, they're appointed to these positions by corporations who donate, countries included, that donate large sums to this. The world's biggest lobbying group is United Nations, right? And subsidiaries like the World Health Organization, they don't have any opposition, right? There's no opposition to the United Nations, no opposition to the World Health Organization, no opposition to the International Atomic Energy Agencies, which was created in 1957 by an unknown number of people, unknown people, and after about 2 years started reporting in 1959, reporting to United Nations, and the United Nations corporations has this another subsidiary part of their company called the Security Council. But I can create a company and create security councils. I can do the same thing as they got. I got officers, security councils, everything else. But they have no authority over you or a fly or anything else on this planet or a piece of wood that washed up on the beach. I'm just a company, right? So they're trying their best to take over this planet. Now, previous climate change conferences where what's going on is the cheerleaders at the current protest, they don't understand that. They want them to get rid of coal because they think coal is the solution. They've been pulverized with propaganda from public relations for quite 5 years straight, anyway, 6 years since the Paris Accord, just bombarded with the word climate change and coal. So they think that if they get rid of coal, problem solved. But that's how the propaganda works. That's why they have this corporation named United Nations as a frontman for the nuclear industry. The nuclear industry is a very powerful industry worldwide. So previously, they tried different tactics on the population. So 1 year they had everybody calling to kill climate deniers. And you were labeled a climate denier if when you took part in the conversation, you had to take one side or the other side. You couldn't be somebody trying to figure out what's going on. You had to pick a side. And most people did, unfortunately. Climate alarmists calls for burning down skeptics' homes. And the media published it, is the problem with this. The media liked the rhetoric and said, well, we're not saying it, but they said it, so let's put them up on the front page. And therefore, by proxy, you think people who don't know any better thinks that the media is, so they fight with everybody in their community. Pretty soon the country is just a wreck. At Earth's Summit Royal Society and the World Wildlife Fund, humanity is an unsustainable danger to the Earth's ecosystem. But in reality, nuclear is an unsustainable threat to all species and humanity. And they've set in motion a chain reaction cascade effect that is exterminating most of the species in the last 10 years, the important species. And I've done research expeditions since Fukushima nuclear meltdown, up to 4 to 5 months a year, doing species counts, and we can't find the species. A total shock. Went there with the intentions originally of getting samples and testing them for radiation. So I brought around 7,000 plastic specimen bags with me, and all the markers and all the stickers and all the fancy stuff. And then each time I come ashore, I was going to mail that down to keep it fresh, pack it in nice. And I couldn't find anything. And everybody, even though I provided 250,000 pictures of the coastline with the GPSs, the nuclear industry is just attacking me, saying, it's not true, it's not true. They actually were out in the comments sections for a couple of years while I was on the ocean doing research, trying to convince people in the comments sections that I was out there with 45-gallon drums of bleach, and I would go around a shoreline and bleach everything, and the next day when everything washed off, the rocks, I would go there and take pictures. Because, see, you forget so quickly that 10 years before that, every rock was covered with life. The whole coastline, there was enough protein in British Columbia, from Vancouver to Alaska. There was enough protein in the tidal zones with an 18-foot tide exchange to protein for the entire planet, the human species, every one of us, sustained without hurting it if you harvested and took care of it. It was saturated with life. It was never seen anything like it. And then after Fukushima, shortly after Fukushima, everything disappeared. So the police were kettling some of the protesters today. And then they didn't like their attitude, so there's 10,000 police down there. So they got shoulder to shoulder to shoulder, and you have this weird connotation when you look at the picture, right? That's a pretty weird looking picture. They're like, what's going on? Well, the police got us all surrounded. We're in real trouble now. Get your mask on. But this is weirdness, because it wasn't very long ago, skeptics, they were going to burn their houses down. They were actually rioting in the streets down there. This year we got little Greta, and little Greta's a very meek person with wouldn't hurt a fly. So she's the perfect one to lead all the suckers, the cheerleaders, into saying, yeah, we got to get rid of coal instead of nuclear. Nuclear is what you got to get rid of, and you got to get rid of nuclear. You got to get rid of nuclear because it's killing the Pacific and the Atlantic and all the species, all the insects, all the birds, all the important species too, like the feeders. There was a study a few years ago of 56 little birds' nests, 2 birds raising a little family. And they caught a whopping 5.6 million insects in 56 nests in 22 days. That's a lot of insects, but it's not in a healthy environment. And that's what just 55 nests needed to raise their fledglings. And now we're seeing nests full of dead fledglings. They're getting born, but they're getting no nutrition, and they're emaciated and dies in the nest, and they're left behind because the corpse lasts a long time when the radiation killed most of the bacteria, so the corpses don't break down the same as they used to. The royal family climate interventions. Now, the royal family...
Ready!
Guys, don't shoot.
Open fire!
Sorry. Forgot Sometimes I'm fooling around with the graphics and I don't really remember what I've done. The royal family's climate interventions have left no one in any doubt that they want meaningful actions for the summit. Is that some kind of sick joke? Charles got 150 servants, for goodness sakes. It's absurd to suggest that, the Queen has one of the biggest owners of uranium stocks on the planet because she owns the rights to all minerals, particularly Britain and Australia and New Zealand, countries that have been conquered a long time ago. They got an endless war machine behind them. An interview with the father of global warming. That's right, it's just one person. Did you know that? Oh, by the way, net zero, you guessed it, just one person. A brief and frustrating history of the carbon footprint. How we can bring your footprint down. Gee, I wonder how they're going to do that. The idea of a personal carbon footprint was popularized by a large advertising campaign of the fossil company BP in 2005. BP, you know BP, don't you? The campaign was intended to divert attention from the fossil fuel industry onto individual consumers. What a bastard, eh? So blame you for what they done. It instructed people to calculate their personal footprints and provide ways for people to go on a low-carbon diet because they killed all the fish in that part of the ocean, see? Yeah, there's no method to that madness, is there? The strategy also employed by other major fossil companies, borrowed heavily from previous campaigns by the tobacco industry. So climate change is because the tobacco industry didn't want to pay people and get sued in court and pay people for the cancers. And the plastic industry to shift the blame for negative consequences of those industries, like underage smoking and cigarette butts everywhere and plastic pollution, onto individual choices. You hear it all the time. Well, that's his choice. He has the right to do whatever he wants. Smoke that cigarette, baby. I got Shears and Philip Morris. So in the nuclear industry, every time you would hear these cows being mutilated by unidentified flying objects and taking out pieces of the liver and flying away, that was actually the nuclear industry had accidental or purposeful releases into the community. And because they like being surrounded by farms, then they can blame UFOs for what they're doing, because they would do it in the middle of the night. Wait for it. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but most nuclear power plants, if not all of them, are surrounded by farms. I'm pretty sure that's an accident. They don't want to really poison you, do they? Is that about the only reason you would have farms everywhere, so you can poison everybody around nuclear power plants? You don't do it to a coal plant. You don't do it to an oil, gas, or plant. But you do it for nuclear, where it's always radioactive fallout. Even the future nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. But don't worry. If you eat Japanese, you're going to get all the radiation you never wanted. So the nuclear industry used UFOs to blame on mutilated animals in farms. That you go look at these stories, you used to see them in the garbage magazines at supermarket aisles. Kidnapped, had a baby by an alien that looked just like Mork and Mindy's alien. James Hansen. What can I say good about James Hansen? Oh, that's right, nothing. James Hansen, this is a great story. Climate science. He's actually from NASA originally. Too bad he didn't keep him there. He's best known for his research in climatology. You said Scientology, Dana? It's almost the same thing, actually. his 1988 congressional testimony on climate change to help raise broad awareness of global warming, climate change and global warming. It's funny because he recently got $1.2 million from Taiwan for promoting nuclear. It's equal to the Asian Pulitzer Prize, Nobel Prize. James Hansen, a nuclear lobbyist, ex-NASA employee, said that NASA was 99% confident that the warming was caused by accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that they punch holes in all the time, and not a random fluctuation. Hansen's testimony was pivotal, according to Timothy McDonald of the University of Mary Washington. Hansen's testimony was pivotal. Hansen's testimony was an important turning point in the history of global climate change. Starting to see a pattern here, or is that just me? And ranked the official beginning of the global warming policy debate and marked the official beginning of the global warming climate policy debate. Crypto-eugenic media's group's population control brainwashing was a smash hit. And here it is today, baby. It's total control now. Think about this number here, because 50 atomic decays a second is the evacuation zone. Now, neutron is like plutonium, uranium, hot particles, nasty hot particles. 13 trillion times more neutrons, 13 billion times more neutrons than initially estimated. Now, this was an estimation based on multiple nuclear meltdowns, remember? So when you multiply it by 13 billion times, that's oh shit stuff, okay? Obvious implications for human health. You can't have the implication for human health without the species too. All the species are more vulnerable to this stuff than we are, and we're vulnerable, trust me. We don't have no... Neutron radiation is the most severe and dangerous radiation known to mankind and can travel great distances, like, right around the entire planet in a continuous invisible snowstorm that looks exactly like that, specifically exactly like that. Because that's a model based on TEPCO's radioactive fallout. 200 trillion becquerels a kilogram. So you got 5 million fuel rods, or a pound each minimum, at the top of the building. You got 800 tons in the reactors versus Chernobyl was 200 tons. And Chernobyl was mostly graphite. These creatures in Japan were the biggest in the world, by the way, these reactors. And they had the most volatile fuel, pure uranium, pure plutonium, except for reactor 3. That's actually billions of times worse than a normal, brutal, wicked nuclear meltdown. It was called mixed oxide fuel. It's crimes against humanity to even possess it, because in order to produce it, you have to pollute the entire northern or southern hemisphere, or both. 200 trillion becquerels a kilogram. So divide that into... See, a becquerel is an atom floating around, pulsing energy every second in every direction at the speed of light, looking to kill your DNA and chromosomes or harm anything that has splitting cells. It's just everything. And the material spread globally. And a major part of the worst plume persisted for a long time also in living organisms. But the plumes... we just showed you that one, didn't we? Yeah. The plumes are continuous plumes. Not like a plume from a bomb explosion or engine blows up and there's this big puff of smoke and it drifts away, right? Like you see a diesel truck in front of you and it kicks out the puff of diesel, that floats away. It doesn't go very far, it lands. It don't create plumes like this. The only thing that creates plumes like that is very, very light particles. And when you're talking about the numbers we're talking about per kilogram, you're talking about multiple reactors and multiple fuel pools with decades of reactor cores detonating. You're in the 20, 30 million pounds times 13 trillion atoms pulsing every second. These are absurd numbers. There was a lot more than that, though. That's the problem with this whole story. 200 trillion, rather. Moscow unusual radiation fog explained. Unusual, right? Why is it unusual? Because this is called fog, said one of the Ruskies, one of the aristocrats. This is a well-studied physical process. Now go away, leave me alone, or I'll have the police steal your sunglasses and your socks every day for the rest of your life. So, who knows what happened? But there's an unusual fog in Russia that was associated with radiation. Russia has the Mayak reprocessing facility. They also have many other nuclear events there. In fact, every time that they have a major forest fire down there, radiation is liberated back into the environment and everybody's Geiger counters are screaming, which means you're breathing it in. It's going to sequester in your muscles, your organs, and your bones, the same as animals and mammals and insects and birds, where the body attacks it non-stop immediately for the rest of yours or birds or animals or insects' lives or mammals' lives. The body attacks with white blood cells. That means you displace now red blood cells that carry oxygen, nutrition throughout your body. But you're not going to stop breathing now. You're going to keep breathing, so you're going to get more in you, and you're going to be eating. You get more and more of this man-made anthropogenic. The same with the animals and birds who live close to the ground, where this stuff is pulsing energy at the speed of light, hitting each other and changing direction, creating an extra X-ray effector. Insects are getting sterilized throughout the forest. This is why forest fires are so wicked. There's no bacteria to break down the forest. Yay. July 30th meeting revealed depleted uranium storage facility burned after the quake. You remember they show you this picture of a chemical factory close to the coastline on fire? And they'll call it Fukushima, right? They had put a lot of fuel over. There was over 1,800 pounds that burnt. They call it DU, depleted uranium, but it's actually DOLRAM, depleted uranium low-level radioactive material. But we don't know specifically if that was fuel rods or DOLRAM. They got rid of the latter part of that acronym. Nobody knows why. Climate marchers to Conference of Parties 26, 30,000 people. We are watching you. And you got no way to watch them. You don't even know who they are. So what that has meant to get the whole world to rally behind them, for countries to go ahead and just give United Nations everything. Give them everything. Give them all your reserves, everybody's bank account, because they're not going to give it up until they get it off you anyway, right? They want it all. They want everything every country got. They don't care anymore. We want it all. Just give it to us. We spent 75 years setting this up. This is the biggest Ponzi scam in the solar system's history. Let us get away with genocide. That's what I'm there, right there. Sea levels are rising. But you don't understand. They're going to blame that on coal. Coal. You're going to blame sea levels on coal. First off, the radiation fallout is endless, and the ocean is hemorrhaging radiation. So I launched research expeditions all the way to Alaska. The arrows are representations of places where I went repeatedly year after year and done species counts. What did I discover, to my horror, to my unmitigated, unimaginable, incredible just horror, was that you can fill the coastline up with people, but you're not going to find a picture like that ever again. They're permanently eradicated now. That's called climate change. It's called nuclear fallout. They're all exposed at low tide each day twice. The radioactive fallout also washes down to the coastlines. This was the nursery of the Pacific Ocean. It was magic. And you'll never take those pictures again. That's just a fraction of the pictures. These are before and after. I went there and the species are gone. Year after year, they never came back. The coastline didn't recede itself. So normally when birds were going along the coastline, they can't find their migratory food they've been chasing for 5,000 miles, they can dart into the coastline and get all the food they wanted anytime at all. And the common murres, of course, could dive 600 feet all day long, and they do. That's a cakewalk in the coastline to get a meal, see? That's why you would never see an emaciated bird pre-Fukushima, because the coastline would be loaded with food. I mean loaded. You have no idea. Columbia medical professor inhaling just one radioactive hot particle can cause cancer. But cancer is just one of 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries, illnesses that manifest from radiation. For all species, for animals, insects, birds, they're not immune. They don't got Geiger counters and they don't know the difference. So they got wiped out. It's heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. The problems are enormous. And just a single particle, you can put 2 million particles on the head of a needle, you can't see it. 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. That ends up in your diet or your baby's food or your laundry, and it gets assimilated into your body. Millions of professional ring climate-related health crisis alarms. Millions and millions of professionals. Because they're seeing this bizarre outbreak of Alzheimer's, dementia, and autism, and heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. Japanese doctor, contamination, Fukushima, Daiichi now spreading all over the world. There may be radiation damage in other countries. And this is what they're seeing, see? They think it's caused by coal because the industry and the medias are controlled by a small group of corporations now. It's not like they're all individual media, so everybody gets the same picture with the same paragraph and the same author at the same time right around the planet. You can't have another conversation. The Director General of the World Health Organization, aka United Nations, said countries must unite to highlight the unprecedented threat that climate change poses to humans. Well, they're not being real, are they? Because this is not caused by coal or oil or gas or carbon. It's caused by radioactive fallout, period. Dr. Jenny Miller, Executive Director of Global Climate, Executive Director of Global Climate. Global Climate. Let me repeat that again. Are you going to start up a company and call it blah, 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 global climate or net zero or climate change? And now you're the executive director of global climate. That's exactly what United Nations done, by the way. A secret group of people started up a company that's still in business today, 75 years ago. Miller informed leaders the decision made during a conference of parties 26 will define the health and soundness of people for decades to come. Because all countries are going to adopt a policy from a corporation. So if United Nations goes bust, McDonald's will start up a company and call it UN. And then everybody has to go kiss the ring of that company. I'm just crushing it with the views tonight, man. Wow. 25 people on my show after a decade. I couldn't be more proud. 25. I'm going to go ahead and get drunk tomorrow and party. Hell yeah. I took a decade. If I could live to be 1,000 years old, I can have like 300 people on my show at a time. The impact of climate change on people's mental health. Well, actually, Fukushima radioactive fallout or any nuclear fallout from any nuclear power plant, all nuclear power plants, within 50 miles of it, you see the massive increases of dementia and autism, diabetes and Down syndrome, schizophrenia, and autism or Alzheimer's. Right? You'll see this explosion, but when you go to another area without a nuclear power plant, you'll also see a disproportionate amount of males to female ratios within 50 miles of a nuclear power plant. There's more males than females. We changed the ratio of males to females worldwide during nuclear testing, by the way. In October, 50 organizations encompassing 45 million nurses, doctors, and health professionals. That's the scary thing about unions, isn't it? You can put all these people together, and whoever's running the union is like, yeah, don't worry about them. We'll put the union behind you. 46 million people, 45 million people. So yeah, there is a problem. 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested have diabetes. Because when you see that ground zero like that, the rest of the world's getting pummeled. Right? The rest of the world is getting pummeled with radioactive fallout. That's the Atlantic right there. Over there is the Pacific. That's Europe. That's everybody sucking in these radioactive atoms that are making my Geiger counter go pow, pow, pow. By the way. So instead of 1 or 2 per million children with thyroid tumors, it's 13,646 out of 40,000. That would be, let's put it this way, 13,646 out of a million would be brutal. That would be brutal. That would be like holy shit stuff. 13,646 out of 40,000. Scale it up, that's 350,000 out of a million. So the United Nations is not going to tell you about that stuff. Not going to tell you about any of the stuff I'm showing you, that's for sure. The corporation can't get their $183 trillion if they tell people about Fukushima. Global and local cancer risks after the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Global cancer risk. Global. So all of these nurses and health pro, this is like gas, oil, and coal emissions don't cover the planet in plumes. They don't. The only thing that does that is nuclear. They have stations set up right around the world to detect nuclear, right? They all detected these incredible plumes. Some reported it, some didn't. Some of them have no data for that couple of years there, right? Canada moved their detectors off the coastline as the plume was coming in. Because the plumes were so heavy, they kill your Geiger counters, your typical Geiger counters. 45 million nurses, doctors, and health workers need to be aware. And so what I've done was, I'm going to show you studies, not just the government's models and university models and studies and numbers. Here's studies showing you the radioactive fallout worldwide was happening. Global and local cancer risk, global. So Saudi Arabia hammered with radiation. By the way, the radiation is still circling the globe even today. Levels will consistently rise and fall in that 40-day cycle. When it comes to Fukushima, we are all downwinders. So that's all the creatures too, and that's not just humans. Airborne fission products in the high Arctic after Fukushima nuclear accident. Radioactive ceasing during incineration of radioactive contaminated waste from decontamination activities. So they're actually burning nuclear waste. You decontaminate it, and then they stick it in an incinerator and liberate it back into the environment because you can't destroy it. Arrival of radionuclides released by the Fukushima accident to the Canary Islands. This is the strangest one I've ever heard. Decontamination of radioactivity from contaminated vegetables from Fukushima. Decontaminating vegetables and put them back on the market. That's the definition of insidiously evil. First off, who gets the job? Tearing off the outer shells. Then, like, everything they touch is radioactive. They only need to do that for a few minutes. They're radioactive. They're going to be breathing it like mad on top of that. And you need like a $10,000 face mask to stop it from actually getting inside. Reducing radiation exposure. This is a despicable study. So instead of evacuating people, they said, well, when you sit down, you can use newspaper. 16 sheets is like an extra millimeter thickness. That'll reduce the radiation levels by this much. If you use corrugated cardboard, let it on your chair, your testicles won't get so radiated. It's like 4 millimeter thickness. This is madness. A study saying how to reduce the radiation exposure rather than telling people get out of Dodge because you're breathing it constantly. Observations of Fukushima fallout in Great Britain, in Germany, in Korea, in Spain, in Russia, in artificial radionuclides in Russia, in Australia. It's everywhere. It's here, it's there, it's in Italy. It's all over France. It's covering Vietnam. You're going to have health effects, major health issues everywhere this goes. Not just humans, but all species. Not just humans, but all species, folks. Detection of Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident radioactive traces in Monaco, in Beijing, in Greece, and in the Iberian Peninsulas, all over Europe. It's everywhere, man. Poland. And there's like, it's not just, you've seen there's cesium and iodine, right? But it's actually over 1,000 kinds of radioactive materials released from those nuclear meltdowns. 45 million Health Pro declared climate's biggest threat, urged world leaders to act. Because in the last 10 years, since Fukushima, they've been seeing the repercussions for all this radiation. So I can show you all the models, but sometimes it helps to also show you the studies of it actual showing up everywhere. But they only included one fission product or two. There's 1,000 kinds. The reactors actually run on uranium and plutonium, not iodine and not cesium. That's the biggest byproduct, is curium, which you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium, which is named after the devil. And that the radiation levels are circling the globe, so it's going to be symmetrical. So when you see 45 million health professionals, they're only seeing a fraction of this because this is worldwide for 11 years now almost, headed towards 11 years now. The crazies, climate activists call for end of capitalism. Well, it should be some restrictions and controls, like Mark Zuckerberg can't go to jail. Facebook can't go to jail because they have illegal rights that companies are not entitled to under the normal Bill of Rights and Constitutions and Magna Cartas. What happened was corporations took slavery laws and increments gave corporations human rights. It's known as corporate personhood. And it's illegal. It's totally illegal. And so OSHA, which was like a government agency that would inspect facilities for danger for workers and everybody else, OSHA in the United States, got sued for a surprise inspection, which is normal under a typical charter. Because a charter for somebody wants to start up a company. So they get a charter, and the charter says how long you can operate, where you can operate, and if you screw up and you poison the community or abuse or hurt or kill or rip off people, the government is obligated now to prosecute you, and they can liquidate your company to pay restitution for outstanding debt and use the money left over for mitigation, remediation of things that you had destroyed, and put you in jail. But Mark Zuckerberg, because he has these illegal rights that Supreme Court Justice Hugo Blackhead wrote in eloquent dissent in the 1930s, how absurd it was that an amendment meant to free slaves from an oppressive government was being used by corporations to oppress the sovereign people. And so when you see all these people, they're not protesting, they're cheerleaders. They want United Nations to get $183 trillion and get rid of carbon. They're not questioning the narrative, which is why I'm here tonight, by the way, is to try to tell you there is another narrative that you better put into the equation, because it actually happened. And if you go back through my videos, look for what is Fukushima videos, or go back to my original first video on this site, and it's a 17-minute video that explains what Fukushima is in basic Fukushima for dummies, so to speak, no offense. It's very dangerous, it lasts very long, and they're ignoring it and trying to blame it on your tin cans, your pop bottles, and your cardboard. That's not a solution. We've got to come up with solutions, right? The climate protest movement, worsening drought, storms, and floods, which is what happens when you heat up the ocean. You radiate the ocean with this. See, the reason we put the fuel in storage pools for decades because it's so hot, it's boiling off all this water each day, and that's saturated with atoms because once you take it out of the reactor, it's still splitting the atoms. It's just not under 60 atmospheric pressures any longer. And now there's no containment. So the pools suck up trillions of atoms per liter, and that is evaporated about 120,000 liters a day of 440 nuclear pools worldwide are doing that. And the more fuel you put in the pools, the more atoms is saturated. And as it boils off, you liberate that atoms back into the environment. These are hot atoms. These are pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. And this has caused us irreversible problems in just 10 years. So it's only going to get worse, obviously, right? It's destroyed the ozone on top of that. And have kept the pressure on government. So there's a lot going on. It's the whole legacy of nuclear. Fukushima was the tipping point. Because like a bomb goes off, it's a millionth of a second. A nuclear meltdown could be forever. It's just hemorrhaging radiation. And what I mean by that, these are atoms. And they never go away. You're always just adding atoms. It's like a bucket. So you got a bucket there, and every day you come in with a bucket, another bucket of coins, and you dump it in the bucket. But the bucket can only take the same size as the bucket you got. So the coins now all spill all over the place. You come in the next day because you got another bucket of coins, and you dump it in the bucket. But that bucket is already full, so the coins go everywhere. And you just do that every day for the rest of your life. And then when you die, somebody else comes and does the same thing every day for the rest of their lives. This goes on for millions of years. Until the pile of coins covers the whole planet. That's basically radiation, except you can't see it or hear it or smell it or touch it or feel it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. Xenon known to cause dramatic increases in lung cancer. It's not just humans, moose and bears and deers and spiders and everything else. It's all species, birds and mammals and animals. It's not just humans. And these plumes were shocking, horrific plumes. This is a xenon plume here. In Washington, D.C., was 450,000 counts per minute sustained, which is over there. And this is the Atlantic Ocean sustained. That's just one of the many, 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 many models of the radioactive fallout from government institutions worldwide. So in Chiba, which is about 20 kilometers away from Tokyo, it was 400,000 times normal. Do you really think it's going to stop there? that kind of a plume. It's like a snowstorm covering the entire planet at the same time. Simply put, it's over. Tokyo's on the edge, shows hosts appeared astonished by strontium. For every cesium, there's another 100 strontium 90s made. But there's also, say, 60 strontium 85s made. And the list goes on and on and on. You know what I mean? Dramatic aerial photos show 100,000 people telling United Nations to get on with it, boy. Get on with it. And shut all the coal off and fix it. I want to go home and play video games. This is craziness. This is batshit lunatic. Like, if I was living in the woods and someone came out and told me this story, I'd be like, nah, that's not possible, man. Come on, we got all kinds of governments and scientists and universities and medias would have stopped all this. Guess who got bought up by the lobbying group over the last number of decades? Earlier we told how young Communist League protesters were kettled by police. Young Communist League. Like, don't join groups like that, for God's sake. What are you doing? It sounds more like a agent provocateur scenario, where you have recruits go out and pretend they're protesters, and you get them all to dress the same, basically. You call them a group, and you call them, this is just an exercise. Like, okay, sounds good, I like exercises. So the police surround them now. Police say, let me a bunch of people come by with a red face mask on, surround them. Cattle them. Don't hurt them. Cameras are going to be there waiting. And so then they put that in the newspaper. Young communist parties. The commies are coming. Go back and watch your 1950s, 60s, and 70s movies. They're all talking about spies on atomic energy. And you remember the Atomic Energy Agency, when it was created, was branded in secrecy. Protesters brandishing signature flags and wearing scarves over their faces clashed with the officers during, poor riot police got a chance to take out their newest weapons. That's just terrible. I feel so bad for them. Children living near nuclear plants have double leukemia rates. So if you're pro-nuclear, go buy a house there. High incidences of solid cancer. You want to get mom and pa's pension, move them down there. Get them their retirement home right down there. Reactors cannot prevent radiation from escaping. The fuel pools at every nuclear power plant are hemorrhaging. This is why they're surrounded by farms. Global Day of Action, so they can poison you. Global Day of Action for Climate Justice, Greta Thunberg. I was going to cancels the speech. Is over 100,000 joins the march. She was probably at McDonald's. Not just cancer, how low doses of radiation cause heart diseases and strokes and Alzheimer's and dementia and autism, heart, lung, liver, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenal. Nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. So if I got 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it, and one of them will give you cancer. 2 million of them sequestered into people's bodies will give them cancers 20, 30 years down the road. 2 million people. So when you have a lot of fuel detonate and release particles into the environment, all the species are under siege now. And the IAEA, the creepy, despicable, coward IAEA, today admitted there is no such thing as a safe level of radiation. And that their radiation standards are based on benefit, not safety. There is no benefit to anthropogenic man-made radiation, period. They sold you wolf tickets, folks. 21 arrested as police say COP26 protests was beyond scale of anything they can remember. The Conference of Parties. You would not estimate how many people turned up, but the Conference of Parties 26 coalition, which organized the protest, by the way. Yeah, they're all cheerleaders. Yeah, they can go ahead and pretend they're protesting. Put the number at more than 100,000. They're bragging rights now, eh? That makes it the biggest protest at the climate summit so far. biggest and baddest. Help me. Tibetan climate activists in Tibet face prison, torture, and even death. All they do here in North America is kettle you on the internet. Nobody can find you. Here he is. See here. What do I got going on here? Oh yeah, this is they're targeting the kids that day. They're encouraging the kids to go out and protest. Take a day off school. Don't listen to the teacher. Take the day off school. We'll have a bunch of police, and you can follow them with your signs saying, give United Nations $183 trillion so they can get on with it. Just give them everything you got in your countries. We'll have a party. Everybody's having a party. Don't you want to make United Nations happy? Don't you love United Nations? Are you a communist? Do they need to kettle you, you communists, you commies? Yeah, they actually had a party because the protesters done exactly what they wanted them to do. Total control. Resistance is futile. Child cancer risk doubles if exposed just to a couple of x-rays worth of radiation during pregnancy. You're getting x-rays now from all the radioactive fallout. You can see it on my Geiger counter up there. I'm getting it. Well, you might as well get it. Stop being such a bully. So all of the radioactive fallout is setting off my Geiger counters, pulsing at the speed like they're hitting each other and creating an X-ray effect in the studio here. Wonder bars, right? Air travel industry emissions fall outside the scope of COP26 agreement. I forgot to get something. Hang on. I'll get it right quick. Wait. PLANNE. Airplane emissions. Don't give me an auto for that. Why not? Did I spell it wrong or something? Yeah. Emissions and maps. Map. Oop. That's not an airplane emission map. We want airplane emission images. Wait for it. Airplane, wait. Airplane emission, just bear with me. Airplane emission pictures. Airplane pictures. I'll show you something now because there's so much traffic. See if we can find it. I apologize. No, well, satellite pictures it should have been, so we're not going to find it. Satellite pictures would have been the better way to go. No, I don't see it there, but because when you put emissions in there, they're going to pound you with coal, right? That's all of them link back to the global warming machine. So, like, airplanes are flying at a very high altitude and not very efficient. They're releasing and burning and wasteful all this heavy fuel into the environment at a very high altitude. So it takes a very long time for it to fall out. But each day, most of the country is under a cloud of emissions from airplanes. So you can't do that from the ground. You can only do that from up high. But that's not going to pulse energy every second. Eventually falls to the ground. Radiation just floats around the planet for millions of years, pulsing energy every second. UAE hosts panel sessions at Conference of Parties 26. This is geoengineering. To highlight countries' achievement in geoengineering research and applications. So if you go way back to 1952, 35 people died in an infamous Lynmouth flood disaster. Came only days after the Royal Air Force rain-making experiments over southern England. It has emerged. 90 million tons of water swept down Narrow Valley in the Lynmouth. So you remember you had the bad weather in England for the protesters? They were probably up seeding the clouds to make it rain, do you see? You think they won't do it? You can actually buy stocks in these companies that go break up clouds so farmers' fields don't get destroyed. They do that by sharing the clouds off. But going up and seeding the clouds, you're changing the weather. So they created storms. They made the monsoons in Vietnam last for an extra 6 or 7 weeks, washing out complete communities off the mountains, where they were chemtrailing it for 9 years. Rain enhanced research and applications. Rain enhanced. It's cloud seeding. Up flying around in the chemtrailing the sky to make it rain. The NCM team will also share their insight on how cloud seeding. Now, so you can use the same technology to put something else in the cloud, like silver iodine or something like this. Advancing cloud seeding research. So Vietnam, they chemtrailed the skies, aka seeding, the country where they knocked every seed off every tree permanently. They defoliaged every plant in the country, took the leaves off every tree in the country, and they killed all the insects, all the coastlines, with Agent Orange for 9 years straight. There's 3 million children with permanent disabilities in Vietnam right now from the Agent cloud seeding, chemtrailing. 3 million children permanently disabled, and no way for. This is what they've done with Agent Orange, cloud dropping. Try wrapping your mind around that. These were all forests. They got rid of the forest. Imagine getting rid of the forest in your country, because they did it to the whole country for 9 years. And they've done it with a chemical that's banned worldwide now and left 3 million children even today. Babies are still being born constantly that are disfigured, are burdening to the whole community, but they try to raise the child the best they can. Private jets swarm Glasgow for the Conference of Party 26. Emit more pollution than the country in Scotland churns out in a year. Nothing surprises me anymore. Military emissions need to be on the agenda. Global military expenditures rose to almost US $2 trillion in 2020. $2 trillion. $2 trillion. Trillion. So they can build 2 billion first aid centers worldwide, real ones, and staff it for several years with that kind of money. They can solve the energy crunch with that kind of money in 1 year. Because this is 1 year, right? So if you took $2 trillion for solar power and wind and compressed air storage and pumped hydro storage, you wouldn't need oil, gas, coal, or scumbag nuclear, see? Air travel emissions, industry emissions fall outside the scope of climate change corporation. Well, they fly everywhere. They're not going to pick on, they fly everywhere too, right? Outrage is fossil fuel nuclear power firm swap. I just skipped past that, did I? Where the hell is it? Oh yeah, 1,000 fossil fuel and big business was actually nuclear. Fossil fuel and nuclear power firm swamp conference party with 1,000 lobbyists. And of course, a lobbyist was illegal before they butchered human rights laws in the Constitution of the Americans, which spilled over into Canada and Europe and other countries. Outrage is fossil fuel and nuclear power firm swamp. So 1,000 lobbyists showing up pushing nuclear and oil. Most of them are going to be nuclear, I can warn you. War costs the earth. Oh yeah, and a lot of these are the typical ones, of course. One to be noting though, you got Shell, BP, Equinor, Chevron, Total, Gazprom, lots of nuclear there. McDonald's, Bayers, Walmart, they're all the same as UN, by the way, right? Pepsi, Microsoft. Now, Bayers, a number of years ago, probably 12 years ago, Bayers had 4 million doses, or 4 million aspirins, 4 million bottles of liquid aspirin and Jello pills that got contaminated with the AIDS virus. This was up on Fox. And instead of destroying it, it somehow ended up in 3 countries, China being one of them, Africa being another one. I can't remember the third one, maybe I'll remember before the story's over. And so we've seen China executed the executives who shipped it into their country, by the way. The bullet to the head and the family had to pay for it. And Africa got most of it, the majority of it. Some went into China, some went into another third world country. And Africa got over 2 million bottles of aspirins that were contaminated with the AIDS virus. And so then Africa had an explosion of AIDS, 1 in 4 people down there. And that wasn't an accident. It wasn't an accident. And so these are lobbyists, other lobbyists, right? But the nuclear industry is well entrenched in this United Nations, because that's the IAEA. They refuse to acknowledge any adverse health effects from multiple nuclear meltdowns. Is absurd and is murder. That's murder. That's a genocide and an ecocide and an omnicide for all humans, all species. They warn of the corporate capture climate policies. Now, well, the media's got captured decades ago, and now it's complete. All the universities have been captured by the nuclear industry in particular, and a lot of lobbying groups. But all universities have been captured by the nuclear industry a long time ago. See, radioactive fallout is global warming. It kills everything that regulates the temperature. It destroys the ability of the ocean to capture carbon or produce oxygen. Right? It sets the stage for the planet to go downhill. All the fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation. This is absurd numbers we're talking about. These are catastrophic amounts all day long for thousands of years. They got no intentions of containing this stuff because it's so volatile. The gases are so volatile. If you put it in a building, it'll displace the oxygen in the building. And then one day you'll open the door up and the building will detonate because it only takes oxygen to make it detonate. It's producing so much atoms. See? They pulse energy every second. It's truly, should never exist. Its entire legacy is predicated upon deception and misrepresentation and deceit and dishonestness and genocide and omnicide. 39,000 people who have registered to attend the Conference of Parties. So you can go attend it if you're from corporations. But if you're just a normal person, they call you a protester. Scumbag protesters. And you're only allowed to protest that they're not stealing everything quick enough. The countries didn't give them everything they got immediately. That's what the big problem is with UN. They want it all. I've been out of 73 years. They want everything. Give us everything. We'll fix everything. Everybody can dress the same. They're insane. The whole system is not supposed to exist. It has no right to exist. Conference of Party 26 is a gigantic, fraudulent mess. So calling it a climate cult is being polite. It's a death cult and a secret society that's been around for over 75 years. It's well entrenched in everybody's societies now, and they look like us, but they're not like us. They don't like humans, and they don't like insects or birds or mammals, despite the fact that they're humans. And we know this because they're killing everything with radiation constantly, and it shouldn't even exist.
Okay.
One more time.
Oh, okay.
Now, who is that? Everybody knows who he is, right? Let me get rid of the radioactive fallout. Everybody knows who Homer Simpson is. He's a nuclear power plant operator in a cartoon. And he sleeps while it melts down, and someone yells at him, but it's okay, gets demoted, but it's all good. He's a good servant. He goes to work each day, and he's a clown, right? He's a clown. You'd be surprised how many people out there today still goes, go! Because they're just firmly entrenched in this propaganda machine. See, Homer Simpson is created by the same people who gave you the Hulk. He's created by the same people who gave you Spider-Man and Wolverine and the endless, absurdly, insidiously, brutal, wicked, endless amounts of zombies they've thrown at us. They got every superhero you've ever heard tell of on the planet coming at you, full boogie. All of them live because of radiation. They're all created because of some form of radiation. All of them. All these weirdo superheroes everywhere you look. It's the damnedest thing I ever saw. They're coming from every direction. Yeah, it's getting worse now. They got rid of the word hero. Now you got GoPro hero. You got guitar hero. Nobody even knows what a hero is anymore. In fact, people think that a hero is somebody like this here, right? That's a hero, Dana. Or there's their heroes. Or even worse, there's their heroes. Not their parents, not their aunts or uncles or friends or cousins or clever neighbors. No. Their heroes is some fictional weirdo, some zombie created by the nuclear industry. Okay, all right. We need nuclear power like you need all your teeth hauled out. The last thing you want is nuclear power. There's only one answer that's like, no! Every nuclear power plant, by the way, needs at least 2 external power supplies, usually coal, oil, and gas. But that coal, oil, and gas, that doesn't make plumes. That doesn't make plumes. get there, hopefully. It doesn't make plumes of radioactive fallout. So coal, oil, and gas doesn't pulse energy every second for millions of years at the speed of light. Now, I keep saying that, I know. But what does that really mean? And another way to look at this, it's not bad enough that it pulses energy every second around the entire planet. I'll get there. But there's another issue with this, is it radiates all the leaves. So the leaves now, when they fall off a tree, they land somewhere, they're going to radiate something too. They're going to radiate that little patch of ground they land on. And that'll go on forever. It's just, it radiates this, that radiates this radiates that. It's this cascade effect where nothing can escape some kind of effect. And this stuff is not created by the sun. This is not something from the solar system. This is not something species are acclimated to through genetic superior selection. They don't have an autoimmune trigger for radiation because it's anthropogenic, man-made. An invisible blanket of death covers everything. Now, have you ever heard that for coal, oil, and gas emissions? Former World Health Organization expert blasts UN experts, says Fukushima reports warns of cancer spikes. But the World Health Organization is UN. They're just different parts of the same monster. These are lunatics to claim we need nuclear power. The Conference of Parties Climate Summit has begun in Glasgow. We need to expand nuclear power to tackle climate change. Now, how is nuclear power, which pulses energy every second, how is more of that going to solve the crisis? The crisis is because of endless radiation killing off all the bases of the food chain, the bases of the oxygen chain, the bases of the carbon sequestration chain. So people don't think that the protesters should go to Fukushima and help? What the hell, man? What kind of bullshit is that? 72% to 30 votes. 28% of the people don't think climate protesters should work at Fukushima nuclear meltdowns for one day with the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, and the immigrants don't speak the language. There ain't no scientists there. They can't work along nuclear scientists if they're not there. They got to work with the homeless. So whoever's voting no, they're just a bigot. They're prejudiced and they're part of the industry, obviously. We got yeah. Hang on. Try it again. Almost here. Oh, well, I screwed it up, don't matter. So that's kind of weird. Nuclear power, the solution for our energy needs. Every nuclear power plant needs at least 2 gas, oil, or coal plants. 204 comments. Public relation firm is in there deep, eh? Nobody has that conversation. It does this every second, no matter where it's to. It pulses, these big pulses, right? Every second or so, it's giving a big pulse of energy. That could go up to 50 feet away. That wrecks your DNA, your chromosomes, etc., etc., etc. Oh, sorry.
Bed goes up, bed goes down, bed goes up, bed goes down, bed goes up, bed goes down, bed goes up, bed goes down.
He's a nuclear operator, by the way. Thank goodness people like him are on the job protecting everybody. Climate crisis could give nuclear energy a second wind. Well, first off, every nuclear power plant needs 2 external power plants to build it. It needs 2 external power plants dedicated to it to run it. And then it needs 2 external power plants for 100 years to clean it up. What's left there didn't migrate into the farmers' fields and get ingested by your dead loved ones. Geothermal power plants in Japan quadrupled since 2011 nuclear accident. Geothermal. So it works. What? It really works? Yeah, it was actually easy. All you had to do was put a pipe down into the earth with a pump and bring up this hot water and start making energy. It's stupid how easy it is. Go nuclear to end fuel poverty. Kooky crazies urge the Scottish government to adopt nuclear energy to help solve the fuel poverty. You heard of fuel poverty, haven't you? Everybody heard of fuel poverty. There's another new slang they got out there now, fuel poverty. The very awkward nuclear embrace. The very awkward. Yeah, well, nuclear's not awkward. It embraced everything on the planet. It's poisoning us and everything is heating up the planet non-stop. U.S. Navy sacks 3 U.S. nuclear subs employees over a mishap. Like, Russia has 160 nuclear subs ran up on the beaches in this one spot in northern Russia that they abandoned. I'll get to it in 60, 70 years. The ones that sunk into the ocean, they've had academics doing studies that said that the submarine won't deteriorate, nor the nuclear reactor, for at least 1,000 years. But the submarine that never had a nuclear reactor, that'll deteriorate in a couple of years. Lunatics is... How can Scott Morrison just decide and announce with no mandate or national debate whatsoever that Australia is going to embrace the nuclear technology? Just up and decide and announce, after extensive secret discussions with the nuclear industry in America and the nuclear industry in Britain, but not a word with the Australians, a fleet of Australian Navy nuclear-powered submarines, unimaginable just a few weeks ago, have been declared an integral to our future with barely a murmur. The British military in the 1950s used Montebello oil and the lands of Maralinga in the South Australia outback to experiment with and test nuclear bombs. In fact, what the British had done there is crimes against humanity for sure. They actually wrapped up uranium, plutonium, fission product now, and like a lot of it at a time, with conventional explosives and set it off, and then had academics come in and study the fallout patterns across Australia. They waited for the winds to blow from Montebello, Maralinga, across Australia, and then they set off the weapons. And they had a fleet of planes up flying all the time, checking the weather. When the weather was just right, going to blow right across Australia, for sure, it wasn't going to fall short, and they set off their nuclear weapons. And then add insult to injury, decades later, when the people said, how are we going to clean up this incredible, expensive mess? Like, we'll give you $100 million, but that's it. Don't ask again. They're savages, boy. It took a fake royal commission in 1985 to establish the casual link to an otherwise inexplicable rise in the rate of birth defects and cancers. Australia has the most cancers per population per 100,000 on the planet. I can't remember what the number was, but they have the biggest numbers per 100,000 on the planet. Climate protesters actually demand global blackouts. Well, one of the nuclear tests, for instance, to give you an idea how this actually works, was 2,400 kilometers away from Adelaide, the capital of Australia at the time. And in Adelaide, on the government's Geiger counters, universities' Geiger counters, were 96,000 counts per minute of gamma. They didn't have alpha or beta or neutron detectors. They just had gammas, and these were good ones, but they weren't the best. So minimum was 96,000 counts per minute sustained in Adelaide. And they didn't tell people to stay home or get rid of their exterior clothing or stuff like this. And now they have the highest cancer rates per 100,000 on the entire planet, because they're cowards. They won't push back. They're good little soldiers for the British Empire is what they are. Climate protesters actually demanding global blackouts. No, they're demanding to kill all the nuclear power plants on the planet. Look how creative these scumbags were. Act on the Paris Accord. This is nuclear industry down there, right? Doing most of this, for goodness sakes. South Korea to push 2 referendum issues. One of them, should they activate the 4th nuclear power plant in New Taipei City? Taiwan. If you look at Taiwan and their nuclear legacy, you're like, what the fuck, boy? You guys are lunatics. I'll give you an example. The natives have their own Orchard Island on I think it's the northern part of Taiwan. Taiwan's an island, right? And there's this other section of Taiwan that's separated from the rest of Taiwan. It's called Orchard Island. And this is the natives of Taiwan they have their community there. And so anyway, the government said, we want to build a tuna can factory over here. And they're like, very good, that's great. Yeah, go ahead. And they're going to do it anyway, right? So they built the tuna factory, but it wasn't a tuna factory. It was a nuclear holding site for rusty containers of brutal nuclear waste. So they told the local population it was a canna tuning factory, when it was actually hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. And so anyway, eventually they found out. And so what they done, now they had to kick back each year to the community a few $1,000s for each person, and they can go ahead and poison all their children for 1 billion years. Everything is good. They're all friends and buddies now, so it's all good now. That's South Korea. Or Taiwan, rather. And my apologies to South Korea. I can get you on the other stuff, but I'm not going to right now. So, but also Taiwan, after Fukushima melted down, had 2,000 nuclear students, first, second, third year students, 4th-year students, for several years, spam the internet, every video, every article, every comment section, pick a fight with anybody concerned about Fukushima, and convince everybody that it's like a banana or a potato chip. They're walking in sunshine. Incredibly vile, unbelievably vile scumbags. Insidiously vile scumbags to do something like what they've done. The students. The first thing in nuclear college was get out and lie to the population. Sustain it. Own it. Don't let anti-nuclear chaps gain an inch. Global momentum to tackle China. Australia's Prime Minister gaffes in a speech goes viral because he didn't want to grab nuclear, see? If not you, who? And if not now, when? So again, what they're saying, act now, is get rid of coal. And the nuclear industry is to pick up the slack. Well, you're going to need energy. Nuclear's baby. And so about a month ago, they started artificially inflating uranium stocks where they get up close to this. Renewable energy can help save the world. As long as they got nuclear, right? Now, so when you look at this, it looks like there's birds, don't it? I don't know about you, but to me that looks like birds to me, Dana. Right, and so you know me, I'm pretty good with the green screen. Not too bad if I do say so myself. In fact, I'm actually pretty good with this stuff. And I can spot a fake when I see it in the media. I put the birds in there because the birds they're showing you are actually fake. That's fake. I could do a much better job for them. So you notice the background? It's two different cameras, right? So one got dirt and the other one is a real picture. And so they just poorly, by the way, cheaply, photoshopped debris over the bottom half. It looks like a bird's, right? But it's not actually, they photoshopped it in there for some reason. I got no idea why they would do something like that. But they did. They're not helping. It's not helping. 10 of the most powerful weapons in the Fallout franchise. So radioactive fallout, a lot of video games out there now have radioactive fallout. And that term shows up everywhere in the search engines. And it's endless. So you're trying to trace back something, and then it's a dead end. It's a video game. And I have that happen to me now over the years, hundreds of thousands of times. Because they'll even put certain connotations in these video games to do with studies that they don't want you to find. All you'll find is this video game shit. It's on purpose, eh? To hide their crimes. Offsetting Bitcoin carbon footprint would require planting 300 million new trees. Well, the Typhoon Miranti in China took down half a billion trees in just one spot. The winds were gusting well over 230 miles per hour. Now, nobody's home is built to handle 200 mile per hour winds because that's not natural. You can trace that straight back to Fukushima. So, but you're seeing typhoons and cyclones and hurricanes worldwide since Fukushima, and sometimes 5 or 6 at the one time, including in the Atlantic, of storms that are hundreds of miles wide, 700-800 mile wide, and sustained winds in 250 mile per hour, 265 mile per hour in some of these cases, like in the Philippines.
Well, this is the city of Xiamen, the commercial hub of Fujian province, but today so much of it looks like this, testament to the force of Typhoon Miranti, which swept in across the Straits of Taiwan during the early hours of Thursday morning, packing winds of more than 300 kilometers an hour.
300 kilometers an hour. That's real wind, Dana. That's real wind. Secret footage of Bruce Springsteen's. This was 3 Mile Island days. Back in 3 Mile Island days, it never made the light of day. National Cancer Awareness today. There's a cure for cancer. It's called DCA. You can get it on Amazon.com, but you can't get it on Amazon.ca. And if you're in Canada, you can ship it into Canada through Amazon.com, not Amazon.ca. You won't even find it there. It's called DCA. It's a mineral. It's harmless and innocuous and benign. It's been used in all kinds of exotic diseases with no adverse side effects ever recorded because it's a mineral. It's like vitamin C or vitamin D. It's harmless. What it does is it makes your blood separate. Cancers make your blood plate together, so to speak. And so your blood no longer carrying oxygen, nutrition throughout your body. Your blood now becomes you get these blood clots, right? And so the DCA it allows your blood to operate properly, and that eradicates cancer right away. Cancer can't live in that environment, apparently. So this study out of Canada, this is a very old video, very low quality. I'm going to play it for you anyway. And CTV here in Canada ran this story. And the first part of it is going to show you x-rays of rats with human tumors, human cancers. And this is quite
and is relatively cheap. But as CTV's medical specialist Avis Favreau explains, redeveloping the drug may not fit into the business plans of the big pharmaceutical companies.
The tumor, the 3D
Dr. Evangelos Mikalakis has given cancer researchers a brand new lead with an old drug, a cheap, inexpensive powder that costs just pennies a dose.
You typically get this eureka kind of feeling, and it's actually the most exciting thing scientists can get.
The drug, called DCA in short, has been used for decades in humans with some rare inherited diseases. When he added it to the water of mice and rats given human cancers, the results surprised him.
And has this big tumor growing in his back. So you can see that even after 3 weeks there is a significant or 70% decrease in tumor size.
It shrunk brain, breast and lung tumors in the animals in a matter of weeks, and the drug had no side effects, confirmed by tests of DCA in humans for other diseases.
This kind of results, to my mind, are as good as it gets.
Is as good as it gets. As you can see the tumor to the right. So before the big tumor and after just after 3 weeks. That's after 3 weeks. It did that to all tumors. The French Environment Minister here in Canada says it's not up to the government to decide which sources of energy will reduce the country's emissions. He refused to declare his support for nuclear energy. They'll get rid of him pretty soon. He ain't going to last very long. He's gone. It's one thing not to do it. It's another thing to come out public. Dana Desana in the comment section says, chemo is Drano. It's just like Drano. That's such a sad thing. It's reality, unfortunately. Scores of protesters worldwide maintain pressure on the leaders. Maintain pressures. Listen, the people at the meeting would give everything in the country just to join that death cult and that secret society. And they're trying to figure out a way to steal everything from the countries and give it to United Nations, so United Nations doesn't destroy everything on the planet. See? Because United Nations are this weird death cult that hates everybody. And they want to take over the world. And they want all the money and they want it all right now. So Fukushima covers the whole planet in radiation. The United Nations like, radiation? What radiation? Is it going to kill everybody and all the species? Yeah. Well, there's no radiation. We don't want to hurt nuclear's image. You can't have nuclear without doing this. Killing the planet. With the Conference of Parties 26 credibility. What? You're trying to claim that the United Nations actually got credibility. Here's a terrorist. I don't know if you've ever seen this terrorist, but keep your eye out. He sniffs bicycle seats, this feller. And these guys are hardcore, eh? Environmental campaigners have cried betrayal. Yeah, they sure did. Look at them. As years of UN climate negotiations to rein in... So years and years of the United Nations trying to rein in climate change. Have you lost your mind, man? They've done nothing. Years and years and years it's giving them money and they're like, we need 183 trillion. We'll fix it then. We'll hire people to fix it for us. The scariest thing on the planet is everybody that works at United Nations are firmly indoctrinated. All the protesters are not protesters, they're cheerleaders for United Nations. Like, yeah, give them all the money, man, we gotta kill coal. That's complete brainwashing. Rich nations that fail to meet, I almost feel like retiring after seeing this for the last 8 days. I'm like, geez, we got no hope at all. These people are incredibly brainwashed. There's zero possibility we're going to break into that bunch. Hey, there's another narrative. What? You're a climate denier. We should burn your house down. Because that's what they used to want to do, right? Was burn your house down. If you questioned their narrative, then you were a climate denier, buddy. And that was playing with your life, being a climate denier. That's one spot you don't want to go, even with a couple of pit bulls and you're loaded with cash and guns and everything. You still don't want to go near them crazies. Hang on. These figures are crazy too, man. Let's barcode everybody at Bert. This cracks me up. Hang on, I'm getting there. Oh, and there's so many of them you can't actually keep up with it, right? Wait for it. Edible vaccine inventor jokes about culling the population with GMO virus. GMO on top of that. CEO wants to raise retirement ages to 70. Climate alarmist calls for burning down skeptics' homes and barcoding everybody at birth. And climate funds like UN want diplomatic immunity. Well, UN already has diplomatic immunity. That's probably why McDonald's is down there, and Pepsi, they want diplomatic immunity too. Australian professor, global warming deniers should be sentenced to death. And so they produced the studies, but then refused to acknowledge it. No, we didn't produce that. I don't know what that is. Don't show me that. Imagine if all the protesters were going around. Imagine if you had a couple of hundred protesters, not 100,000 with that sign there. Woo! The journalists wouldn't be allowed to take any pictures. Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming because it kills all the species and it causes this cascade effect. Negotiators turn to Plan B as climate pledges fall short. That's normally known, there's a cliche for that one, it's called blackmail now. They'll blackmail every country. How much would it cost to reduce global warming? We could do it for about 131 to 180 trillion. Give us 131 trillion, it's a little under budget, we'll work out the details later. That's what they want. How much would it cost to reduce global warming? United Nations stand to be the ultimate rich, 131 trillion at their disposal. They can buy up all the uranium stocks themselves now. Police praise good-natured marchers in Glasgow. They were good-natured. Unlike their cronies, wants to burn everybody's houses down. Get rid of those. Well, they brought them crazies in on purpose. To have that narrative, they brought them in on purpose. They brought them in on purpose. I don't know anymore. One thing I know is they're doing exactly what they're helping the United Nations. They're demanding the world give United Nations everything they want. The world's going to end tomorrow at 6 p.m. or something like that. They don't give United Nations everything they want right now. Give it to us! United Nations is down and throwing fits at the supermarket because they can't get their $131 trillion. It's a bloodbath for the rest of the planet. And this is day 8 of the Conference of Parties. Cluster Smurf up. He's the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency. He's Dr. Death himself. This is a death cult, right? And like I showed you the whole kit and caboodle tonight. I gave it all, baby. You got the fodder of global warming, the fodder of net zero, the fodder of climate change. I brought all the A's and B's tonight. That's what I done. Population control. Everybody down there said, you got to give United Nations everything they want. They got to stop the coal. They got to save the planet. 5-6 years straight of incredible brainwashing. And baby, did it ever pay off. It's madness. It's amazing. We're in so much trouble. I'd give up right now, but what's the point of that? Someone's got to stand against the straw men of this generation, which is United Nations. And they're not the final. United Nations is a tool, right, of the military-industrial complexes. And so I'm not even allowed to share my videos with YouTube. They got me censored. My chat won't show up for 12 hours. The video won't show up on the front page for 12 hours. It'll show up a little bit longer than what it is when the show is over. I won't get no more thumbs up until 2 days' time. They took down my site with 24,000 subscribers a few months ago, less than 2 months ago. Because they knew this was happening, right? And got to get rid of Dana. Dana makes sense. Get him out of the equation. And they're very good at what they do, aren't they? They're such cowards. They sit there and revel in what they're doing on top of that. This bizarre death cult known as nuclear. Well, that's it, I suppose. Has to end somewhere. We got 31 literally 0 votes here tonight compared to any other night. We got 31 votes, 74% says that climate protesters should have to work at the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns for 1 day with the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language because nuclear scientists ain't gonna go there. Nuclear students ain't going there. The IAEA ain't going there. He ain't going to Fukushima and help the homeless. Hey, good job there, homeless people. Because that's who they destroy. They murder the homeless for the nuclear industry. Well, that was a blast from the past. This is day 8. This is going to go until Friday. I done the preamble for 2 weeks before the Conference of Parties began. For 2 weeks I showed nuclear news each day, screech and climate change, top of their lungs. It was a real pathetic frenzy, really, for the last 2 weeks before the conference started. The fake conference by this corporation known as United Nations started. It was this incredible, there's a word for it, incredible submission to the nuclear industry by journalists worldwide. looking for their handouts, I suppose. It's a big payday, right? Everybody's got to promote nuclear for a couple of weeks. Not a big deal. Get all the public relation firms greased up. Get them focused, zero lasered focus on pumping out the word coal is going to kill the planet, kill all the little butterflies and birds. Get all the teenagers out there, better than the crazies. They used to scare these guys over the years. Now they got the little kiddies there. They can steal a few of them and molest them. You know that's going on. Anyway, God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. Good night to everyone. Colette. Good night, Colette. Dana Nasana. A. Ted. Thinker. Ocean Man. Global warming's real. It's Fukushima. Steve White. Mark Rogo. I can't pronounce your name tonight for some reason. Good night, everybody. James Olhand. Good night, everyone. Ooh, Chad. I'm just scrolling through the comments. Quick shout out. Andrew B. I don't know how come I always seems to miss one or two people. It's never the same people. It's always one or two, though. Port Angeles. Sandra Churchill. Boston. Warren. Thinker's been busy tonight. Conrad. Gotta have days like that, haven't you? I'm pretty busy all day. Dan and Asana, Ted Richards, yeah. You're welcome, Colette. Hugs for everybody. God bless you and your friends and your families, your loved ones and your pets, and the insects, and your plants, your community, your planet. See everybody tomorrow night, day 9, at the Conference of Parties 26. Have a good one, folks. God bless.